GM, Hot Takes Cold Wallets, episode 16. First and foremost, Nikita Juan, how are you doing?
Yeah, good. Doing good. Doing good. Excited for RSA coming up. Major cybersecurity conference in San Fran. Flying out Monday. So, yeah, that should be interesting. I mean, a bit less crypto stuff going on there, but actually, crypto security and traditional security are colliding very quickly right now. So, going to be some interesting conversations there for sure.
Yeah, doing great. Can't believe that is edition 16 already. Seems
Yeah.
like, I don't know, crazy. Yeah, doing great. I'm actually in an event right now here in Buenos Aires, exploring also new verticals here with Chain Patrol. So yeah, I'm excited for everything that is happening right now.
We also have a very special guest today, and if my camera fades out today, don't worry, I don't know what it is, but we always have some technical issues, so we gotta deal with that. Quid is here today. Zero Quid, welcome, man.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
We're gonna be talking about Quid in a quick second, but first and foremost, we're gonna do the segment one, which we are always introducing when we're starting the podcast. It's the Chain Patrol update, Nikita. Juan, what's good on the Chain Patrol side of things? What has the week looked like on a brand protection front?
Yeah, I mean, what we're seeing right now is just a huge one. There's a huge spike again on Twitter and scams recently. I mean, they've always been around, but we're seeing a lot of attackers that were previously around doing a lot of the Twitter reply spam, a lot of these other areas, like tactics that we thought kind of died out for a little while, coming back across pretty much every major profile. So watch out for that. This was a big thing like over a year ago, then it died down in 2025, and now it's back in a big way. So maybe some attackers from before they woke up, or somebody else just took over the same approaches. They're also doing a bunch of new stuff around trying to obfuscate their images and other stuff to try and make it harder to basically to deal like to detect. We're right now updating things to catch them quickly and get rid of them. And then team impersonations, we're seeing this happening at a ton. Like, one thing to mention is that everybody's Telegram accounts are getting hacked, and then those are reaching out to other teammates, to other like people that you know. So watch out even for messages coming from not just like a new fake account, but maybe like a suspicious message from somebody you already know, have been connected with for a while. Just be on your guard. These are some just like major tactics we're seeing start to spike even more. These have always been a thing, but in the last week or two we're seeing a really big spike around these kinds of attacks.
Would you say that they're becoming more sophisticated or more scalable in general?
Bit of both. Scalable, I think it's just like there's many attackers running the more advanced types of attacks now, and it's easier. There's the kits that make this super easy to do. And then there's also, I think, more and more attackers that are just like figuring out the nuances of how to set this up and how to target. Um, they are very actively looking at what are we doing to catch them and what can they do to get around it. For example, just recently, I honestly thought they would start doing this sooner, so I'm surprised they haven't done it sooner. But before, like, a lot of them would just like copy paste like a company's logo on Twitter on 100 new profiles. Now they do some stuff to like put some pixels in there, adjust the colors a bit, do some other stuff that would, if you're using a more simple image recognition setup, it might break your code, but we have things in place to make sure those are being caught. So yeah, that's they're definitely doing some leveling up their tactics to avoid detection.
It's a great start. Quid, I think most of the people listening tonight, they might know you from Twitter, but maybe if they just know you from Twitter and they don't know your full background, you're like a Solidity dev, you're like a security researcher, you are vice president of blockchain at Yuga, and you also have your own project with OSnipe. Tell them a bit about your background and maybe how you got into smart contract security and all side of Web3 things you're doing.
Yeah, I've been into crypto for a long time, and it started with a love for Bitcoin in 2013. And back then, I won't go into the nitty gritty details, but let's just say I tried to buy my first Bitcoin I had a very bad experience on Coinbase, and so I kind of started. I dedicated myself to helping other people get their Bitcoin without going through Coinbase and without having to go through central banks and all of that kind of stuff. So I did that for a couple of years and kind of just like fell in love with helping people transact in crypto securely. And so when Ethereum launched, it was kind of like a fantastic playground, but also a very dangerous one. And I was fascinated with all of the hacks and drains and all of these things going on, and devoted myself to learning how to defend against it. And so that started out very modestly, a lot of just like free reviews for friends and stuff like that. But luckily caught on and now has grown into a pretty active side business as a smart contract auditor, as well as obviously a developer in Solidity. And, I basically spend my life there. So yeah, it's just a lot of practice and a lot of hard work.
Here's a nice background story for those who don't know the connection between the two of us. Maybe you have kind of been my mentor when I first joined the space in 2021. And back in the day, Quid was just like hanging around in the Lazy Lions Discord, and he was just being very friendful and very helpful to people who asked questions. And I kind of discovered like the same lane, that people were getting scammed left and right and up and down, like basically everywhere. And I was like, there's no way that a guy like Quid is able to handle all of these incidents that are happening all the time. So I just like asked him all the time about stuff before LLMs. Basically nowadays everyone can just go to ChatGPT and say like, hey, you are my personal 0x Quid, answer me some questions. But Quid back in the day did a lot of work, and yeah, took me by the hand, which I greatly appreciate, and it deserves some credit, man. I really appreciate it, the time back in the day. Yeah, maybe to start out with another question about the vulnerability stuff and kind of security side of things. Was there any like big vulnerability or something that you saw where you personally took the thought of, hey, this space needs some security work, or desperately?
Oh man, I couldn't point to one, but you were around. You just mentioned the Lazy Lions Discord, and there had to have been an instance of somebody losing lions every single day. It must have been every day, and it was across every project, all of crypto. During NFT mania, you don't see the same volume of attacks these days, probably because our space has become rather niche. But back then, everybody was targeting NFT users. And so every day it was setting approval to some scam contracts or visiting some website that was like promised a mint, but it was fake. It was drainers left and right. So it wasn't one particular scam that piqued my interest, but rather just the volume of scams that was happening that kind of just like, I thought somebody had to step in, and I'm glad I inspired you to do the same. And with Boring Security, we've got quite a few people now working through the same kind of stuff. But yeah, the volume of scams going on and seeing people that I considered friends losing what to them was like their entire life savings, or even if it wasn't a large monetary amount, it was very sentimental to them. After all of that kind of stuff, man, I knew I had to help.
I remember back in the day, you're also making a bunch of tools to like interact directly with like the smart contracts, and so you don't have to like go through like minting UIs and this kind of stuff. I think that was kind of interesting because it's a lot of these front ends and malicious sites are the things that are really hitting people. So I think this whole idea of like building the tools to go right to the smart contract was a very interesting approach, and I feel like still like very like underrated today. But yeah, that was really cool to see.
And thankfully that's gotten a lot easier with the advent of Codex and Claude and all of these LLMs that can help walk you through the process. But I do feel like interacting directly with Etherscan or even like CLI kind of stuff these days is kind of like a superpower in Web3. So I wanted to teach as many people to do that as I could. And I remember in 2022, I believe it was, maybe it was 2023, I launched my own NFT project called Cutes. It was kind of like a riff on Frank D. Gods's secondary collection, Utes. And it started as a joke, and like I just wanted to build a big whitelist, and I wasn't even really going to launch a project. I just wanted to go through like the whitelist phase. But everyone was having so much fun getting on the whitelist. Every challenge was like, okay, we've got 5 whitelist spots available. You got to go look at this contract on Etherscan. You got to call the right mint function. 3 of them are a scam and 1 of them's real. If you get the right one, you're on the list. And we'd do that, and I'd come up with like a new game every couple of days, and we'd play it. And people learned how to interact with contracts or how to read them through that. And they loved it so much that I was like, okay, maybe I will launch this collection and we'll just play blockchain games as I come up with them. And so we played blockchain games for like 2 years. I kind of ran out of ideas, but if I have any more, I'll plug them in and we'll keep playing. But yeah, back then, first of all, I learned a lot that way. I'd put out these games and it would be like 5 contracts that all interact with each other. And I'd say, you guys are one team, you guys are another team. This is the objective, go for it. And every time they'd find a way to break it. And I'd learn something new about Solidity or the quirks of EVM or something like that. And they'd,
well, that's the best way to learn, right? You gotta get a bunch of people to run in and break whatever you built, right?
Exactly. 0 stakes. You know, it was all on testnet. So I wasn't like getting this stuff audited. I wasn't even really reviewing it myself before I pushed it out. I was just like, let's go. 2 days, bang out a concept, publish it, let's play. And then, you know, we'd iterate and I'd build and I'd keep fixing stuff. And it was a really, really fun period. Although I was nonstop writing code for like, I don't know, it must have been 4 months, like from the time I woke up to the time I went to sleep. So it was exhausting, but it was a lot of fun. I learned a lot. My community learned a lot. We spawned some really great devs through that, like Coffee, who is now like one of the main devs on Abstract, and Thomas, who's one of the main devs at Limit Break, and to me might be the most talented dev in this space. They all came up through that ecosystem, and like we all had so much fun together, and we'll always be, to me, I think we'll always be friends. But yeah, the focus was always about learning, getting better, educating, spreading knowledge, that kind of stuff.
Was amazing. I was team Unicorns, by the way. So the Cutins lost, I think, right? Ultimately, they lost, right?
Yeah, in the end, yes, they did. By 1, and it came down to, I think it was first to 10 in total. Mm-hmm. And, you know, each game was 2 weeks long or a month long, depending. So I was actually really happy with that result, that it was very close in the end. There was a lot of back and forth.
It's interesting you mentioned like Thomas, which is like 0x just a dev, right? He was also in my DMs back in the day when Nikita DM'd me. This is the fun part. Nikita also DM'd me in 2022 or something, and I never responded to him because it's funny. Like if we all ended up in the same circle in 2022, imagine where we would have been like today, which would have been really amazing, I guess.
Yep. Yeah, that happens to me too. I'll you know, link up with a person. I'm like, oh, this person's super cool, and then I go to DM on Twitter, and I've got an unread from like 5 years ago. Oh my gosh.
It's funny. We actually we swapped. You bought one of my Kutins way back when.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You reached out and you're like, oh, this one's sick. I want it because I minted one of them, and then you're like, wait, that one's sick. I want it for myself, and then
I know exactly. That was you.
Yeah.
Thank you for selling me for like 0.35 or something.
Yeah. That was the.
I absolutely. That's still my favorite Cutin.
Nice. The lore.
Nikita made a buck from the Cutins, I guess.
Yeah,
he did. But hey, I'm glad I found you, because I found that Cutin, and then I was like, I gotta find this person.
Yeah. Well, here we are.
Yeah,
amazing. Quit. How has the scale changed for you? Like coming from your own. It's not a DeFi project, but an NFT project to coming to work into like an Yuga ecosystem nowadays.
Oh no, it's not changed. It's just bigger. You know, I have more support around me, which is great. I have a really talented team. I don't have to do everything myself, which I'm super thankful for. But at the same time, we all throw around ideas, we build quickly, we throw stuff in the trash and rebuild. It's a very similar experience as like solo building to me.
Nikita, what would you say? Like this build fast approach? Is this especially needed in our space?
Well, I mean, you need to go to mainnet eventually, and going to mainnet is a tricky time, right? It's like, you're taking your baby and throw it into the pool, and you're like, let's hope it swims. And I think building fast is important, because otherwise, if we're a bit too slow, then people will start to question what is the kind of like benefit here, and then like just traditional based, like non-blockchain based tech will move faster than us in some ways. But now we're seeing that if you get it right and you focus on like smaller bits of code, I think the way you build fast is by not overcomplicating things, and by building like simpler, very focused smart contracts that can like stand the test of time, and then getting good auditors to work with you as well, and having a security mindset on your team, so that by the time you hit the audit phase, it's not like, oh, nobody's even thought about security when writing this, and now you have to do like a million back and forths. It's, you thought about this from the start, and it's going to save you like weeks or months even to get this shipped out. So yeah, I mean, I think building fast is important everywhere, but it can't be entirely at the sacrifice of security. That's the entire kind of balancing act that you always have to go through. And I think if you spend a little bit of time on it early on, it will save you a lot of time when you have to go to mainnet.
Yeah, and I kind of sit on both sides of that, right? And I think that's one of the benefits of being a part-time auditor, is that like on the one side, I'm part of a team. We want to get stuff out the door. We want to just like ship. And then on the other side, I'm auditing for obviously us internally and also lots of external teams. And I know that they want to ship. And I have to be like, okay, guys, I know we got to pump the brakes. Even with the advent of Claude and Codex and stuff, like, you still need to spend time doing an audit before this stuff goes live, because you only get one shot on ETH. And obviously upgradable contracts, blah, 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 blah. But in my mind, we do things immutably, right? And so you publish your contract, that's what you've got from the time it goes live until the end of time. And so you really need to get it right. And a little extra, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever, going through the audit cycle before you launch, it gives you an enormous ROI.
And I just want to mention that, like, I think building out the smart contracts in an immutable way is also like really important, because it kind of eliminates a whole vector of attack in some ways. You could have like messed up the smart contract code itself, but now you have removed the vector of whoever controls like the keys to run upgrades or make any changes, like that person is now a target. Now they can be phished, they can be social engineered. Hacks can steal the keys wherever they are, if it's a multi-sig even. So yeah, I think immutability, it's like, it can be scary to some people in some ways, because they're like, well, what if something's wrong? I can upgrade. Well, that's also an attack pathway as well, if somebody can upgrade for you.
Yeah, and that attack pathway never goes away unless you revoke the upgrade permissions. But like, to me, I would rather have my immutable contract forever on the chain than say like, oh, there's a 1% chance I might want to change a feature at some point down the line, so let's just make it a proxy just in case. And that's, I'm a purist, especially when it comes to blockchain. So I think of the immutability of ETH smart contracts as kind of part of the beauty of the art. And I understand that a lot of people don't share that same perspective. And so to the everyday person, upgradability or non-upgradability, it doesn't matter to them. And so from the deployer's perspective, they think, I'd rather have the safety. Nobody cares anyway. Let's just make it upgradable. And I will, as an auditor, I'm never going to say, make it immutable or else, but I will flag it as like, just, hey, you know, immutability is a feature if you want to go this route.
Yeah.
Or go ahead. Yeah.
No, just wanted to mention that I actually think that immutability, like the thing on smart contracts especially, was something that was actually much more reviewed in 2021, 2022, 2023, even that. Like people were actively reviewing all the smart contracts of big projects, any projects launching at the time, and they actually see like, hey, dev can change everything if he wakes up the wrong way this day. So don't interact with this, don't buy this token. I think I have seen a lot of those cases in the past, but right now it's not like a narrative that is being pushed so much by community and crypto communities in general. I think they are taking a look at other things, other ways to trust, but not especially this way to mute like the contract. So I don't know if it's something that you also see on your end, like people
I do
actually
see it.
care about this in your experience.
So it kind of feels like we lost the war on proxy contracts, right? Because like even the newer Uniswap stuff is all upgradable, and so and like Blur Exchange is upgradable, and I don't know, they're just you see a lot more proxies than not these days, and nobody does seem to care much. But I think that there are instances where it makes sense as well. So for instance, if you're building like, I don't know, an on-chain game or something like that, let's go with OCH on Abstract. I haven't actually looked at their contracts, but I'm gonna guess that they're upgradable. And it makes sense because as much as the transactions are all on chain, et cetera, if the team decided to disappear tomorrow, your assets are worthless, whether or not the contract is immutable. So it's kind of like you already have to place absolute trust in the team that deployed this contract. So adding that additional layer of like, let's hope they don't upgrade the contract, it barely moves the needle when they have a bazillion other ways to rug the project. But then there are protocols like, you know, to me, Uniswap should absolutely be immutable. And like, you know, contracts that handle exchanging high value assets and could be permissionless, they should be permissionless. And
can we talk about like the audit in general, Quit? Like if we're talking about audits, especially when it comes to proxy contracts, you're basically just auditing the snapshot of the state of the art, right?
Yeah, and it's like, this is why I don't audit front ends for people, because you know, I could audit a front end and then 3 days later it's totally different than what I've like put my stamp on, right? So it is somewhat the same idea with smart contracts, although at least I have kind of an audit trail. Like if they upgrade, you can point to the implementation that I actually audited and say, this is what I said was all good. And then later they changed it to this other thing. But yes, absolutely. You're auditing a snapshot in time. They can upgrade at any time. I think the best option you have there is, if you're going to trust an upgradable proxy, build some kind of alert system for yourself. Or maybe I should build this. I don't know. But just build some kind of alert system that's like, oh, I want to get pinged in Discord if this contract actually does get upgraded, so I can check out the diffs and make sure we're still all good. And if it's malicious, chances are you're not going to react fast enough anyway, but it'll give you some peace of mind.
What's the most common thing you see in audits, since we're already too deep in the topic, Quit? What's the most common thing you see when you're auditing stuff which is like done wrong or needs improvement mainly?
Well,
Is there like a common factor that you see in certain functions or cases, or is it all like depending on the use case and you're seeing like a variable of stuff happening?
it depends on the use case. I would think the most common, outside of like, gas stuff and informational stuff, the most common high or critical severity issues still come from reentrancy or sometimes a lack of access control. But I think access control it's with the advent of Claude, you don't see so many access control mistakes anymore because that one's really easy. You're just like privileged function, slop some access control on there and you're good. Claude's very good at that. Reentrancy is still an issue and Claude is aware of it, but still I don't think it has the depth to really analyze how these things work, especially if you're interacting with some external contract, because most of the time it'll assume how that contract functions and not actually verify it. So most of the time it's just that reentrancy leading to like, okay, cool, you can just jump in here again, steal some extra assets, and then your accounting is totally effed.
Nikita, we talked about this before. I think in a few episodes before, we talked about the auditing side of things and whether that's just like a stamp of marketing approvals in most cases nowadays. What's your point of view on that currently?
Yeah, I think there's a missing step right now where if there was some way to better prove that the deployed code was also the audited code, I've seen some people playing around in this area, but I as far as I can tell, I don't think this has become a standard yet where typically the audit is on like a certain GitHub commit from what I've seen, and you can audit that code, but then anything really else can get deployed on chain. So I think there needs to be some sort of like verification, like maybe like a certain, maybe like TEs or something else can be used for this, but to know that like, hey, the code that was audited was the code that was deployed on chain. Because then similar to like, immutable versus non-immutable versus upgradable contracts, there's also, I think, a bit of a gap there still where there are cases where somebody goes and deploys code that's different from the commit. You can kind of go and verify it back if you want, but like it's not built into the kind of the whole tool chain end to end. What would be cool is that, from looking at the contract, you can actually link it back to the audit. And then maybe even your wallet, when you're transacting, you could see, hey, like this is like tied to this code that was deployed is tied to a verified audit. That to me would be interesting because until then, it's still like there's a couple of leaks in this like wall of security that we're trying to create. We're close, but there's still a few. There's still a few leaks in the like kind of the end-to-end process. I do think the audits are still very important. And I do feel like there's actually a bit less like stamp hunting now. There was like a year or two ago, maybe like there was a lot of that where like every new project that launched, like, instead of like having the VCs that back them or the customers that trust them, they would literally have the auditors on their landing page as like the main thing that's like by these top people. And that still is a bit of a case, but it's less like prominent now, I would say. But it's still important to work with a good auditor.
Yeah, that's interesting. Actually... Let me just jump in for the second, please. Because like the stamp of approval that Nikita just mentioned is basically like I'm asking myself, following the conversation, is like, what does the audit actually guarantee, especially if you have these proxy contracts? Because maybe Quid did an audit in March, but now we are in June of 2026 and the whole code base basically like changed. And what does the audit even tell the audience, like the normal users in Web3, what this actually was about?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in practice, we actually don't see too many teams upgrade their contracts once they deploy them, but the possibility is certainly there. And to the point of audits just being a stamp of approval, investors love that. And I've seen I've seen lots of teams that literally will only go for like a CertiK audit or Spearbit audit because they want that badge on their site, or their investors say like, this is your list to choose from. We need an audit from one or two of these folks. And I have to tell them like, that's fine, but go with Spearbit because CertiK doesn't actually do anything.
Shots fired.
Hey, if we're talking audits, I have to take a shot at CertiK.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's fine. I wanna come to the future of audits in a second, but first I wanted to talk about the AIF compromise. I wouldn't say it's not a compromise, like a slippage incident. They said it wasn't even like a slippage incident. Quit. We saw like the 50 million. Someone tried to swap a token for 50 million in value through a mobile interface, which is insane. But they kind of clicked away the warning where it said like, hey, it's a high slippage transaction, you can lose up to 99.999% of your tokens here, and they continued, and they were left with 50 million in and I think like 36,000 out or something. So from your perspective, did everything work as intended? Because like in the comments I had some discussions with people which were like permissionless maxis, so to say, and they were like, hey, if you like need to parent someone not doing a swap for 50 million, clicking that box, it's their own fault. What would you say to that?
So I mean, yes and no, right? It worked as intended. I don't know how I would design it better. You could, I suppose you could make them type something in, but like Stanny brought up a good point, which is if the token you're swapping out of is like a rug pull or it's illiquid and it's like liquidity is vanishing second by second, you want to take whatever you can get and get out, right? So maybe in that case, 99% slippage is totally acceptable for you. You just want out no matter what. And if they blocked you entirely at the UI level, that would kind of suck. You could still do it through the contract, I suppose, but in a moment of crisis, you probably don't have time to spin up a script and go through a swap that way. So I do think it should be allowed. I don't think that it should be as easy as clicking a checkbox, which like if you're drunk or tired or something, you might do accidentally and lose that amount of money.
Yeah.
I also think it was a very weird swap to begin with. Like, why did he want $50 million worth of Aave tokens? But
I think
that's another story.
Yeah. We see that with like drainers in general too, like all the warnings inside the wallets, right? Like if it's a smaller warning, like it typically gets ignored. It has to be a very like big scary warning and a bit harder to bypass, like to even like alert the user enough for their like, you know, brain to start like treating this seriously and not just like, okay, I'm just clicking through the, you know, the steps as normal. And even then, like it can still be people still very often just click through despite how much information you might give them or how scary you might make it. You know, maybe we need to start putting captchas in there, like you need to solve a cap puzzle or something, or I don't know, like you don't want to the tricky thing is you never really like want to ruin the user's experience, right? Because if you have some false positives or some other things, but you know, losing a ton of money is probably the most ruined your experience can get. So, you know, there is that.
Yeah, right. It only takes one person losing 50 million to net out against all of your other transactions that you know, prevented or didn't prevent. So I think, I don't know, maybe you have to type like, get me out, I need out of this token right now in all caps, and then hit enter, and then it'll trade for you. I don't know. But yeah, the route was odd. It was just like, I don't know the story behind it. There's no way to know the story behind it based on just what was on chain, but it just, something's weird, right? Like he's got $50 million on a phone. He's swapping from stables to Aave tokens with $50 million. Goes through CowSwap right after they turned off their or stopped developing their price protection, Just like a very weird sequence of events that I can't imagine there's not a deeper story to. And I hope we get that story one day. I don't know if we will.
What I found interesting about this is that these topics go viral really quick on X or Twitter. And I think like for Aave, it was like the best PR they ever had. I think it was Stunny's best performing post by 3 times or whatever the amount
Really?
it does elsewhere. And do you guys think, Nikita, Juan, even Quit you, would you think it educates more and it scares people away more? Like for the normie reading this, is this actually something that is helpful, or is it like, oh my God, I'm never touching this again?
It's a good question. One of my neighbors actually asked me about it the next day, and I was surprised that he even heard about it, being from outside of the crypto Twitter circle. And I didn't ask him if it made him more or less attracted to blockchain. I probably should, but I would guess less. You see the story, you kind of laugh at the person, and you're like, wow, people in crypto just losing all their money left and right. And then you move on with your day, and it definitely doesn't make you want to use crypto more. But maybe a deeper explanation of it would. Maybe if you go through and say like, hey, this person's using a totally permissionless protocol to move $50 million. And if he had been paying attention, it could have worked out for him, not with the token he wanted, but if he was moving to an actual liquid token. That's how easily money moves in our space. Then perhaps that's an attractive narrative.
Yeah, I mean, I've always thought about that too. Just like the amount of money you can move so quickly, it's a sign of how much power and how much ownership you have over your own money. Like you couldn't move that much amount of money that quickly in any normal, traditional system, right? And it's like with great power comes great responsibility. You have to be careful with how you handle your transactions. And some people will choose to then also go into more custodial solutions, but that's a choice that you can make, right? And the thing is that I also think that a lot of people when they look at crypto news, they usually they love to hook into the negative news and then just kind of dunk on crypto that are outside. But then every time something new, big, good happens, that kind of just gets kind of ignored. It doesn't make it into what people outside the crypto world consume in their media. So it's kind of interesting, just kind of what news make it out to day-to-day people that might have not adopted crypto yet.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. I think actually, people using crypto, one of their main reasons is because they want the freedom, they want the flexibility. If you are on DeFi, it's because you already make a ton of research and you have cold wallet. This is something that if you're in the traditional way, you don't even know what to do. You don't even know which apps are basically provided these services. So I think, I love Nikita's phrase, with great power comes great responsibility. So for sure, I embed into that philosophy. But at the same time, I think this is a test for the biggest institutions and the biggest protocols that we have in the space. I saw Aave mentioning the deployment of the Aave Shield that basically now blocks all the transactions that goes above 25% of price impact. So the question is why we needed to wait 50 million incidents to have something like this. I mean, if it's not the setup by the Sana, why we need to wait for a security incident like this to happen, right? And I think Aave and other protocols take security really seriously. They have a lot of audits, they have a lot of systems in place, but they actually allow this. And my question in this case is, do they want to allow these cases? Do they want to allow, as Ed mentioned, with Visa rug pull, to be able to make these transactions fast and without any problems if you wanna swap fast? Or actually it's a problem that they haven't seen being actually possible. So I think those questions arise, and this is something that we need to reply as an industry. And if this happens with Aave, this can happen with a lot of DeFi protocols as well that we have in the space, Solana, on Ethereum. This is something that can happen by design, and we as an industry should be able to perform these Aave shields or whatever in other protocols as well to avoid this happening again, and to avoid happening these like bad press above all of us. So yeah, I see that happening.
Quid, do you think it's kind of it's kind of some damage control from Aave in this case? Because like if we're sticking to this code is law narrative, they could have just said it happened, the user accepted it, that's it. Why would you deploy like a 25% shield later on if you think it was okay in the first place?
Yeah, damage control. I think they saw a lot of outrage after the incident, and they had no choice but to put some measures in place. And it's unfortunate that it took such a large loss to lead to them implementing Aave Shield. But I think the lesson is, no matter how clear or explicit you think your warning is, you have to know, or you have to assume that people are going to click through it. And so you can't just display the impact or display the danger. You have to make the person acknowledge it, not just by clicking a button, but by like proving that they've read what you've presented. And that warning has been, we've seen the same thing hundreds of times, right? When Pop Punk on Chain, Harrison launched his Gatekeep protocol, and there were, if I remember, heavy taxes at the beginning, and then the taxes like slowly fade away. And they had on their website a warning like, this is going to be the price impact. It's 95% like at the start, and then it decays down to 50 and 25, and eventually it's gone. Everybody got mad, despite there being a warning on the site and the docs clearly saying like, this is how token launches work. Everybody bought and then lost their money and asked him where it went. And so they had, I don't remember what the end status of that was, but they basically made the person like type out the full docs in a box before they could accept a trade in the beginning. Had to be like, yes, I have read the docs and I understand that I'm losing 75% of my blah, blah, blah. And so like you can assume that just presenting the impact of your trade is going to be enough to stop people, because especially in crypto, everyone's in a hurry and they just want to go and they just want to click through. And like, that's the same reason, despite simulations telling you that you're approving a bad contract or that you're transferring a CryptoPunk to an attacker, you still do it, right? Because people are so desensitized to the clicking that they just, doesn't matter how many buttons they're presented with, they're going to click them all. I think there was an incident 3 years ago, where an attacker stole like 3 CryptoPunks from an OG, Beauty and the Punk, maybe it was. I think it was Beauty and the Punk. 3 CryptoPunks, which means like there's no set approval for all. So you have to do 1 CryptoPunk, gone, click again, 1 CryptoPunk, gone, click again, and just kept clicking. Same thing happened, I think, with like almost 7 clicks. I think it was Bored Apes or something, but it wasn't via approval.
Yeah,
I forget that one exactly.
Those, yeah.
It's like literally like 7 times. And I talked to the guy after, and he was like, I don't know, the MetaMask kept popping up. So I kept hitting confirm. And yeah, so you can't assume that people will read. But then like, on the flip side, we've got some protocols that have that 99% fee by default, like NFT Strategy just launched, or I guess it's been some months, but they start with a 99% tax and then it decays down to 10% over an hour, something like that. And the people who accept that 99% tax still end up in profit, because the price starts out really, really low. And then by the time the tax is gone, it's 100x, 1000x, whatever. I guess it has to 1000x if you're going to make money on a 99% loss, but they still end up in the green. So if you block them from buying, then they're going to be mad. So I don't know where the balance is, but I think we need to stay permissionless. You need to be allowed to buy at 99% loss, but it has to be very intentional.
It's funny because if you ever played World of Warcraft, if you want to destroy like a rare item, you drag it over, you kind of want to throw it away, and then you have to type delete in the chat to actually delete the item, which is like, okay, I type delete, man. What I'm gonna tell you, you type delete, and you delete $50 million. That's not cool, but like that would be an additional step or something like hold for 10 seconds or something, you know, like something that breaks the additional clicking, which you just always do, which you're used to, which is just
Yeah.
a step that's kind of like breaking the friction, so to say, the habit, and then you get like confronted with other UI interfaces or whatever. And I really find it fascinating that we got so many smart minds in crypto, and the UI is, I think it's not ready for retail. Like my personal opinion is it's not ready for retail because, as you said, like people will just go past warnings. They would say, "Hey, I didn't click it," and then if you ask them later on, they said, "Oh, I clicked it 7 times." Yeah, now you say, "I did," which is like in traditional finance or whatever, this is never going to be happening from a system base. But as you said, like Trustle said, it kind of needs it, but the UI UX on crypto, it's I think even in 2026, man, it's horrible to be honest.
Yeah, it's getting better. Even MetaMask, like if you remember back in the day in 2021, wallets didn't even have simulation built in. They had nothing. You'd click and it would just say confirm, and you had no idea what was happening on chain. So at least MetaMask now shows asset changes, simulated asset changes. Rabby does the same. And then you get into the talk about what is what's too much. Like at what point do you get desensitized to all the warnings? Like Rabby makes you acknowledge that you're interacting with a contract you've not interacted with before, or sending money to a wallet you've not interacted with before, or like interacting with something that was deployed within the last 10 days. And there are so many just yellow warnings, and you get so used to clicking through them that when a warning is actually applicable, you may not pay attention.
Yeah, Nikita, what's your thought on that? Do you think like generally we kind of improved the UI? I would agree, because if you think about back in the day, 2021 or even before Quit, even if you when you revoked a token, MetaMask would actually say that you are giving access to XYZ in that very moment, and people ask us like, "Hey, I'm trying to revoke something. Why am I giving access to a token?"
I think the UI has improved a lot. I think it also depends who are we also talking about. Are we talking about kind of like all the OGs or completely new people coming into the space? I think for somebody completely new, the UI has improved significantly. Maybe not a ton yet. There's still some improvements I think we can do, especially around seed phrases and teaching people the importance of them and how to store them securely and all this. But many of the things like Quit was saying, like, there wasn't even transaction simulation. We have that now. There's a bunch of other improvements. I still think we need a safe mode, and I know this goes against like maybe some stuff of like decentralization or like permissionlessness, but I think we need a safe mode where you have an explicit like allow list of like contracts and sites you're allowed to interact with. Make this maybe something that's not on by default, but you can click one button to enter like allow list mode. I think for a lot of people that would simplify things. It could lead down the path of this is now like an app store that's like controlled by the wallet or something, and there's its own challenges with that, but I think there's a lot of people that I would rather not have just able to interact with every site, every contract. If it's just at least a button click away to enable or disable, then you're in a much better state, I think. And so one thing is the allow listing, and then the other thing is that for all the OGs in the space, I think just a lot of bad habits have been built up that we need to forget. people still think about like all the quick mints and all the, you have the collection of 8888, and then you need to buy, if you don't buy it within the first millisecond, it's going to be gone. And that doesn't really, like, people don't really do that anymore. They sometimes, but most of the time, like all the like claims for like tokens, airdrops, all this other, it's open for a long period of time. You have the time to go slow and do it at your own pace. There's no reason to rush. I think we all built a habit of like rushing, and that has probably contributed to a ton of the drains that are happening today. So yeah, I think there's some habits people need to adjust. Like a lot of this, like if you're rushing towards something, you're probably making a mistake.
I actually think this goes back to something we've been preaching since I don't know, beginning of time, is hardware wallets can protect you, not only because obviously they keep your private key safe, et cetera, but because it's one extra step you need to take to confirm your transaction. And I can't count the number of times that I've like hit confirm on MetaMask or Rabby or whatever I'm using at the time. Then I go to my hardware wallet and I'm like going through to confirm. And then I'm like, I actually want to double check something about this. And I deny it, reprompt it, go through the flow again. Like that extra second can save your butt, especially if you're like signing away 7 things, right? You would not sign it 7 times on your hardware wallet because something, I don't usually do this, something is up. It's not like a bug on the web page. I'm not just going to keep hitting sign on my ledger because so I think that is perhaps an untouted benefit of hardware wallets, is not the storage, not the safety or any of the architecture of the wallet itself, but simply the psychology of having this one extra step built in to protect you from yourself.
The speed bump.
Yeah.
The speed bump.
Yeah.
Okay, Quid, before we wrap this up, we already almost at the hour. I wanted to talk about AI and the future basically of smart contracts and smart contract auditing. Because if you're visiting Twitter nowadays and you pay like close attention to the feed, you see people, I don't know if it's a doom and gloom, but they are making up a perspective and a story of AI being able to scan code, which was deployed years ago, probably at scale, and find vulnerabilities. What's your take on that? Will that actually happen? Will we see like mass exodus scams of like protocols that haven't been audited well in the past, or what's your take on this?
Yes, I think we will. I think it's hard for AI to scale and scan, say, like every contract on every chain and find vulnerabilities. But if you point an AI at a contract that hasn't been audited, it can find most of the simpler bugs. And like those exist in tons of deployed contracts today. And they just haven't been found because nobody's looking, because the effort to dig in is too high. So if the effort becomes tell Claude to check out this address, it becomes much easier. And I think we'll see a lot more of like those older contracts getting drained. Or even newer unaudited contracts getting drained. But I don't think that we're at a point where you can just automate looking at the entire chain, unless like, North Korea, they probably have enough compute to do it and maybe enough willpower too. But like for an everyday person, for the people right now that I see scanning old protocols and stuff, they don't have the compute to go just like generally scan a chain. They'll go through dates, deploy dates, stuff like that. And it would take them a long time to get through everything.
Yeah, I think indexing is still like a difficult problem that hasn't really been entirely solved, right? And getting that amount of data out is quite difficult. I do think it will be solved eventually. And I think it is an incoming problem, but like Quid's saying, right now, it would take quite a lot of compute. I do see maybe there's ways to like start by, ranking the contracts, seeing interactions with addresses, There is a lot of garbage though, because like, you can't just like rank the popularity purely off interactions. It could be like spam or like other things. But I think there could be ways to like also write like algorithms to like rank which one, if you were looking for vulnerabilities, where should you start? Because yeah, just crunching through every contract wouldn't really be that feasible right now. But if you maybe wrote algorithms that would look for which contract should you start with based off certain like heuristics, based off looking at like interaction patterns and other things, but also like some deeper things you can't find out without scanning the contract in the first place, because you need to know the structure and understand like what tokens in there, like what values in that contract. So it's like,
yeah, and what tokens are approved to it.
Yeah.
Which is like,
Yeah.
you almost need to build a Dune type query system
Yeah.
so that
Yeah.
you can know like, okay, this contract might not have any money in it, but it has X, Y, and Z approved to it, so it's still worth investigating.
Yeah.
Is there any part of auditing you think will never be automated, Quit?
I don't think auditing can be completely replaced. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I kind of hope I am, but at least for now, auditing or AI is a fantastic tool to assist auditors. But when I go through an audit these days, I still have to go suggest findings. Like, AI can do a great first pass, and that eliminates a lot of the work, honestly. And it's also great at writing up findings after you've discovered them, which also eliminates a lot of work because I hate writing. But when you're looking at novel vulnerabilities, stuff that is unique to the protocol and hasn't really happened elsewhere, or at least not in a well-documented way, I think the human has to be involved. And then you can chat through and say like, Claude, write me a test that does X, Y, and Z and proves X, Y, and Z. So it becomes easier for a human to prove these vulnerabilities, but I don't think that AI is at a point that it can really find them on its own.
That's a great closing point, I guess. Any additional words, Nikita, Juan, from your side?
No, I mean, I think you really need to have still that in-depth understanding of the code base to really make the final decision. And I think that's what people are still very much also looking for, because saying Claude made a mistake is not as satisfying as pointing to a person and be like, you made a mistake, you're accountable, right? Like, and I think that's honestly what people are still looking for. Like, so honestly, at the end of the day, that somebody's willing to put their reputation on the line and say, I really looked through everything here. Whereas with an AI, it's like, if it hallucinates, well, it's like, well, yeah, there's always a slight percentage chance of a hallucination. So you'll get to a stage where you can trust it a lot, and some people might even like deploy code with like that's been entirely AI audited. But I think just the element of like you need to trust somebody is going to be very, very important for a very long time. Somebody that's willing to put their reputation on the line and has something to lose if things go wrong.
Yeah, totally on the same phase. I think that a human having final decision is still important. Like, you can't let AI do everything. If not, we can have like I remember these memes we do when it was like the AWS outages a few months ago, when there was like, hey, this happened because Amazon is firing everyone and there's only AI running the systems. So in order to avoid that, you need like a final view being a human, because you can't complain AI. You can have like a PR announcement mentioning, hey, yes, this was the AI that let us know that it was okay to deploy. It's not being acceptable for foreign companies, and also for where we want our industry or crypto industry to be. So I think it's really important to have like that final certification that needs to be like from an expert.
I think this episode kind of proved the point of AI being like intertwined with crypto so much. We're like at the bleeding edge of tech right here. It happens very fast, and we can also make mistakes very fast, I guess. But yeah, 0x Quid, one of the names you can trust, I guess, when it comes to auditing and stuff. So Quid, very insightful conversation with you tonight. Really appreciate you coming on. Thank you for the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Sorry for my camera blocking out. I'm gonna fix the USB cable after this call. But everyone, appreciate you. I think we're gonna see us next week. And Quid, I hope you'll be down to come on again sometime soon. See you guys.
Thanks, guys.
See you guys.
Have a good day.
Bye bye.
Hello.